Welcome on this beautiful morning to the dedication service for the new shellfish cultivation vessel, the H. Butler flower. After we had designed the program, it seemed that through research we discovered there was a verse that was especially fitting for this occasion, and it comes from the New Testament, 2 Timothy, the 2nd chapter, the 21st verse. If anyone purifies himself from what is ignoble, then he will be a vessel for noble use, consecrated and useful to the master of the house, ready for any good work. And then turning to Psalms in this beautiful out-of-door morning, the 89th chapter, the 8th to the 9th verse, and respectively 14, 15, and 16. Lord God Almighty, none is as mighty as you. In all things you are faithful, O Lord. You rule over the powerful sea. You calm its angry waves. Your kingdom is found on righteousness and justice. Love and faithfulness are shown in all you do. How happy are the people who worship you with songs, who live in the light of your kindness. Because of you they rejoice all day long, and they praise you for your goodness. How fitting to turn to the great poet, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, who has designed and composed this invocation. The sea awoke at midnight from its sleep, and round the pebbly beaches far and wide, I heard the first wave of the rising tide rush onward with uninterrupted sweep. A voice out of the silence of the deep, a sound mysteriously multiplied, as of a cataract from the mountain side, aurora winds upon a wooden sleep. So come to us at this time from the unknown and inaccessible solitudes of being, the rushing of the sea tides of the soul, and inspirations that we deem our own are some divine foreshadowing and foreseeing of things beyond our reason or control. In the opening, we certainly want to express our full appreciation to Captain Dwight Rallier and David Rallier for all of their assistance in designing and putting this program together this morning. And from one of the first speakers that they have given to us on this morning is Mr. Franklin B. Flower, the Vice President of the Franklin M. Flowers & Son, to whom we are indebted and most grateful. Mr. Franklin B. Flower.
Thank you, Reverend Bowles. Can you hear me? Okay, good. On behalf of Frank M. Flower and Sons, I'm pleased to welcome you here today on this beautiful, beautiful day for this launching and christening of probably the newest and most innovative shellfish cultivation vessel in the world, the H. Butler flower. Even though the vessel is in the water, it really isn't launched. That won't happen until she has been properly christened, which is what is going to happen here this morning. The reason we are having the ceremony here rather than at the shipyard as originally scheduled is that when they found out how many people we were having and they realized the space that they had available and the other activities going around in the yard, that it would be inappropriate to have it there. Therefore, we are holding it here, and we're so pleased, really, that so many of you beautiful people accepted our invitation to attend and to honor my father, H. Butler Flower. We also want at this time to thank Mrs. Gloria Tucker and the Oysterman's Dock Company, who helped provide the additional space we need to accommodate this activity. I am very proud to be here to help celebrate this banner day in the life of the man I most admire, my father, Butler Flower. His keen mind, inventive genius, and I've known about this for quite a few years, more than I'm willing to admit. His willingness to experiment and to take a chance, and his ability to attract a dedicated group of responsible employees. Amen to that. Has enabled this local shellfish business to make a valuable contribution to our food supply needs. Also, without the assistance of other oystermen, the financial and the legal community, governmental and university scientists, local service organizations, tradesmen, elected and appointed governmental officials, the employees of the Jacobson Shipyard, the information media, relatives and friends, we wouldn't be here today to dedicate this new shellfish cultivation vessel. Thank you. We thank all of you for your long-standing support. It is our pleasure to have many of you here today as our guests. We're sorry that all of them couldn't be here. We hope that you enjoy this program of visiting and also visiting the ship. I've seen many of you have done that already, but you have more opportunities, and you should, if you can, get a hold of the captain, Dwight Relier, and my father, Butler Flower, to tell you a lot more about what the ship is going to do. But also visit the other shellfish cultivation vessels, the Item A, the Twin Harbors, the Frank M. Flower, the Waldron B., and the Joseph B. Glancy. Also, you can visit the dockside shellfish processing and repair facilities and exhibits. Of course, you're all invited to participate in a luncheon, which will be served by the Oyster Bay caterers beginning at noon. At least I checked with Dwight and said, "Are you sure they're going to get here?" He sure assured me they were. They were here earlier this morning, I know that. One of the reasons we'll be able to be here to christen this new shellfish cultivation vessel, the H. Butler Flower, is because Oyster Bay Harbor is again producing substantial quantities of oysters. Almost all of these oysters begin their lives at the Frank M. Flower and Sons greenhouse hatchery in Bayville. The next gentleman on the program is one of the persons who is primarily responsible for the success of that seed-producing operation. It gives me great pleasure to introduce David Relier, who will preside over the rest of the program. David.
Thank you very much, Franklin. I'd just like to say that Joe Sotilla and myself have been running the hatchery over in Bayville since 1969. And what I'll do is give you a little background of the hatchery so you'll understand what's going on, and then we'll have our following speakers. Back in the early 1960s, there were no more oysters on Frank M. Flower and Sons oyster grounds in Oyster Bay. There were none to be found. So at that time, it was Butler Flower's idea that it was time to help out nature. So his idea was to build a hatchery. So that's what he did. And some of the original technology that was used in the hatchery was developed back in the 20s, some of the basics. But there were no proven technologies at the time that could be used to have a production basis oyster business run from a hatchery. So this was a start. And so in 1962, the original Flowers Oyster Hatchery was built over in Bayville by the Bayville Bridge. The early years, well, I started myself in 1964 at Frank M. Flower and Sons as a summer job, and when I was in high school and when I was in college. And at that time, the hatchery was operating full scale, but it did not seem that profitable at the time. But through those years, through the 60s, we gained a lot of experience. And in 1969, Joe Satilla and myself were put in charge of the hatchery. We modified the techniques of the hatchery and the grow-out system in Mill Neck Creek. You may have seen the raft culture system that we have out there. And when we started to do that, we started to show a small profit early in the 70s. And it was encouraging. So we kept expanding the operation a little at a time, and things really worked out well through the 70s. We had our problems. We had disease problems in the hatchery. We had predator problems out on the oyster beds. We had such things as bacteria, protozoans, fungi, and even little jellyfish that really screwed up the works for us at times. But we pulled through, and each year that we operated the hatchery, we at least put out a substantial number of shellfish. And so the 70s actually proved the hatchery, and now we have a pretty much standard technique that we use in the hatchery. To date, practically all of our oysters, as Franklin said, have come from a hatchery start. We raise the small oysters in the hatchery and then plant them out on the seed beds out in Oyster Bay Harbor. Last year, we finally had a natural set in Oyster Bay. This is the first time we've had a natural set that most people can remember. Butler remembers back in the early 1900s when there were natural sets. But us younger folk, we've never seen a natural set in Oyster Bay. Last year we had an economically significant natural set in Oyster Bay, and primarily on our oyster beds. Now, there is conjecture that that's because the number of oysters in Oyster Bay is so high now that there are enough out there to make a natural set. So we're encouraged that way. But we continue to operate the hatchery. We're not going to depend on another natural set as yet. After the oysters go out of the hatchery, they go out onto the oyster beds. Now, for the past 18 to 20 years, the preparation that was done on the oyster beds for the oyster seed has been done by conventional methods with the older oyster boats and the conventional oyster dredges. Now, that's been a pretty good system. It's worked out and we're making a profit. But we're only getting, of the hatchery seed that we put out on the bottom, we only get from 15 to 35% of that seed back to go to market. So there is room for improvement. And that room for improvement is the H. Butler flower. We hope to be able to use this vessel, which is actually a big vacuum cleaner, as you can see, to clean up the beds a little better so that the survival rate of the oysters from the hatchery will be higher. Now, with this vessel, we'll be able to clean up the oyster drills, which are a small snail that drill holes in the oysters. We'll be able to clean up crabs and starfish. Now, those are the major predators that give us a problem, and we should be much better able to cope with those problems with the H. Butler flower. Now, I'm not going to say any more about the vessel itself because Butler and Dwight will both fill you in on how it's going to work. What I will do at this time is tell you that there is a display from the hatchery Over the building over to the west over here is an old hatchery building. It was used by the Raydell Oyster Company. It's no longer a hatchery, it's a storage area, but we have set up a display of the Bayville hatchery over in that area. So after the ceremony, everybody's welcome to take a look. We have some small seed clams and seed oysters over there and some photographs of the hatchery, so you're welcome to look at those after the ceremony. At this time, I would like to present Mrs. Ruth Flower Townsend, the oldest living offspring of Frank M. Flower, and she'll give us a little bit of the history of the Flower family.
The microphone is a little
We'll pull that out.
No.
I'll take it out.
David, no, it's fine for
Oh, is
me.
it all right? Want me to
Put it down so that you can hear.
That's feedback.
Thank you so much.
That's feedback. Okay, so we got some feedback amplifiers. Wait, hold on a second.
Till I get my
Got it.
glasses.
It's all right. Take your time. This will be adjusting the feedback.
Ada. On this momentous occasion, I happen to be the eldest flower of the family. Butler asked me to tell you about the early days of the Flower family. Frank M. Flower and Sons oyster business, I should say. But he just spoke to me a short time ago, so just bear with me for 5 minutes. William A. Flower, my grandfather, a shingle maker, was born in 1826. He lived in Mill Neck's Shoe Swamp. He married Ruth Gardner, and they had 6 children. This house burned down when my father was only 12 years old. Then they bought an acre on the shore in Mill Neck on the creek and built a home. In 1887, my grandfather started the oyster business. My father, Frank, 2 years later, at 21 years old, built his first oyster boat. He married Ida Mae Spriggs in 1890 and built his own home on a 1/4 acre of the property. They raised 3 boys and 3 girls: Elsie, Alan, Ruth, that's me, Lydia, Butler, and Roswell. As a very little girl, I remember Father building a boat. And most of the time, it seemed to me outdoors with plenty of snow. He was using a homemade steam box to fit the planks and a tree which he had cut down from the woods nearby. Through the years, this tree that he cut down, he used to make the keel, fashion the keel. Through the years, many boats were built, but some of you folks, just some of you, remember that they built the Ida Mae. My father and his 3 sons, my 3 brothers, Alan, Butler, and Roswell, built the Ida Mae, which is the queen of the fleet and still in daily use. We children were very lucky to have a creek and have the Mill Neck Creek as a playground at our front door. And we lived a very busy and a very interesting and happy life. We older children in the summer, when the oyster seed was plentiful on the shore, worked the tides at times, picking up seed. We had an excellent attendance record at the Oyster Bay School, so we were often excused to steer one of the boats at planting or harvesting time. I learned boundary lines, and I learned many other things, but one thing I did learn is that oyster steaks were not for eating. Thank you.
At this time, I would like to present Mr. John Hosfeld, who is the marine architect from Jacobson Shipyard, who brought Butler's ideas into reality. John Hosfeld.
Good morning. On behalf of Jacobson Shipyard, I would like to thank Frank M. Flowers and Son for making this day possible. And most of all, I'd like to thank Butler. I've been asked to tell you a little bit about how this boat was built.
John, I guess a little bit louder. Yes.
Okay. One day, Butler walked into our office with a handful of plans in his hand and said, "I'd like you to build me a boat." So we sat down and we worked Butler's ideas into the H. Butler Flower. I've been asked to tell you how this boat was built. What we started out by doing was making up many pieces. The bottom in sections, the sides, the frames. And one day Butler came down and looked around, and we'd been working on his boat for a while and there was nothing there. Just a bunch of pieces. A couple days later he came in and all of a sudden the boat was starting to grow. The boat is all steel construction, has 9 compartments, including 2 engine rooms, 2 ballast tanks, fuel tanks. The piping system, which is Butler's own invention, is of all galvanized construction and supplies water throughout the boat. He can put water into his hopper to wash his sand out. He can put water on his deck to wash his oysters overboard, and water almost anywhere. In fact, this is probably the best fire boat that Oyster Bay ever had. I don't have too much to say, but this boat has half as long as life, has 1/4 as successful as its namesake, and this is going to be the best oyster boat that was ever built. Thank you.
Over in the old hatchery building, we also have a display of pictures of the H. Butler Flower as it was constructed in stages. So you're welcome to see that after the speakers also. The next speaker we have is my brother, Mr. Dwight Relier. He's the captain of the new H. Butler Flower. Dwight.
This is a great honor for me to be here today, and I want to thank Butler very much for asking me to be the captain of the H. Butler Flower. This vessel is, in fact, the culmination of many years of hard work, experience, and persevering ingenuity of Butler Flower. I guess to put it simply, truly I admire his ability, ingenuity, and a spirit that will not give up, no matter what the problem. And on top of that, he is a compassionate human being. It's been a pleasure to work for Butler. Many vessels are named after somebody as a tribute. This vessel is unquestionably Butler Flower himself. Therefore, I felt it would be wrong to give it any other name. I, along with numerous other people, spoke to Butler and suggested to him that we all felt that the vessel should be named H. Butler Flower. This was not Butler's idea. He was strongly against it. Butler said no. He felt it should be named Pine Island 2, named after the original suction dredge Pine Island. The last time I tried to persuade Butler, he said he would be receiving too much credit. So in the last effort, I said to him, well, if you don't want to take the credit, Butler, you should at least be willing to take the blame. As we can all see now, Butler is willing to take the blame. Thank you. On behalf of all the men of Frank M. Flower and Sons, I would like to present this gift to Butler for his great accomplishment. Butler? Look on the back too, Butler. From all the men.
Can you hold that up here so you get a picture?
Yeah. Hold it up, Butler, so you get a picture.
All right, over this way, this way.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to take the opportunity to present Mr. H. Butler Flower, President of Frank M. Flower and Sons, and designer of the H. Butler Flower.
It's quite appropriate, the gifts you gave me. It shows the Pine Island in its latest stage, all the H. Butler Flower. Thank you all very much. I just don't know what to say. Most of everything that I could say has been said, and I appreciate it. The Pine Island, the Frank M. Flower, or the Pine Island, whichever you want to call it, this is actually a reproduction of the boat we built in 1937 in Pine Island. It's the principles are exactly the same, except modifications into it to improve it. I could spend hours telling you how it's made and what the time we have had in making it. But it's really Pine Island the second. But with my permission, you may call it the H. Butler Flower. And I appreciate the honor bestowed upon me. When my sister spoke about when we were kids, I got in the business when I was about 14 or 15 years old. I knew more than they did at school, so I quit. I've been learning ever since. One thing I've never forgotten, that I'd go on the beach, as Ruth said, we'd pick up the oysters, and we even raked them up. There were so many at that time. We'd rake up the oysters, and we'd rake up the drills. The drills would kill about 98% of the oysters, and we'd have the rest. I'd made up my mind that time I was going to have something to take care of the drills. We have it. The Pine Island, first Pine Island we built, when I first started to use it, we'd put a container under the hopper and come back with about 2 quarts of material. And in that 2 quarts would sometimes be 100 drills. And each drill can drill an oyster every 2 or 3 drills. Actually, they clean up practically everything. But it went along. We used the pine alum, we wore her out and ran out of oysters because there's no seed. And we put another suction dredge on the Frank M, which was practically the same system. We wore that out, and by the time that was worn out, we didn't even have any oysters in our bay. At the time we started the hatchery, I had to borrow a bushel of oysters from my neighbor who happened to have some old oysters but still there. And from then on, we've progressed and doing very well. This past year, David and Joe told me that they had 10 spawnings, and in each spawning they used maybe 6 to 8 oysters. So our business 3 years from now will be run on the offspring of about 60 oysters. That pays for all our labor, all our men, all the repairs on the boats and everything. So we have many hundreds of thousands of oysters out in the bay, and if we could find a way to get them to reproduce, there would be still more work for this boat, and that's what the pine alum's for. It actually is a vacuum cleaner. It's actually a vacuum cleaner. If you see the nozzle here, and if you lift up that door on the back, you can see the business end of it. It just touches the bottom, about 12 inches long and 10 foot wide, and it just picks the very top of the bottom with all the oysters and drills and stars and what have you. They come up on the pipe that's going up onto the hopper up here, the conveyor screen, and they go up the screen, and then they go into a flat screen where we put lime water onto them, fresh water with lime into it to kill the stars and the algae and all those things. And then it goes down on the deck, and the oysters will be on the deck, and down in the hole will be the drills. We don't waste any of that material that goes in the bottom. It's taken onto another bed and planted there. We planted so thick that we could bury the drills and kill them, making new oyster beds. It's my expectation that with this new pine alum, we will clean up the beds from the drills, the stars, and the crabs, and the algae, and all the other things, and raise. I'm looking for 75 to 85% of the oyster we put in the bay to come back through the use of the pine alum. We also are going to use this experiment with clams. We are raising clams in the greenhouse. We have no trouble to raise them, but we have a lot of trouble planting them. We planted 100 million clams up in Babel Creek, and we never got a clam out of it. And we intend to clean up the beds with the pine alum. I still call it pine alum, and raise clams. I want to thank everybody has a part in this thing. People think I'm the only one that worked on this. I have done a lot of thinking about it, and I take the plans down to the shipyard, and John, he straightens them out and makes them so they work. And my men working for me, I appreciate all they've done. They've kept the business going and made enough money that we built this boat. 20 years ago, I didn't think there's that much money in the world I could build this boat. But we're doing it, and I have 2 more boats in my head, which will come on later. And thank you very kindly for being here. I hope you have enjoyable box lunch or whatever it is over there. Something to eat. We have clams that some of the boys are going to open. We have oysters that they will open. And enjoy yourselves and look over our fleet. And thank you very, very much for coming.
At this time, I'd like to thank the crew of Frank M. Flower and Sons, and especially George White, for helping make this whole thing possible. It was a lot of work to get the thing together, and it looks like it worked out really well. The next part of our program will be Reverend Paul Bowles. He's the pastor of the Village Methodist Church in Bayville and a longtime friend of the Flower family. He will conduct the christening ceremony. Reverend Bowles.
A statement of purpose. Today, we are met in these friendly surroundings to dedicate this extraordinary vessel and to give religious recognition to its purpose. It is altogether fitting and proper that this vessel should be so dedicated. God has given us this earth and these seas to use as good stewards. Butler Flower and the Frank M. Flower Company have certainly been good stewards of the riches of God's waters. They have taken great care to preserve the ecology of this area. Butler has now been 1 year engaged in the design and the building of this shellfish cultivation vessel. It is unique. There is none other like it in the world. With an overall length of 85 feet, it can hold up to 5,000 bushels of shellfish. He has designed it so that it has a marvel of maneuverability, moving in all directions, including sideways. Its 5 engines will power it through the waters of Oyster Bay as it seeks out the shellfish beds and destroys the predators that threaten the catch. Concern for our environment, diligence, creativity, and honesty are fine and worthy traits of character. As owner and manager of Frank M. Flower and Sons, Butler Flower possesses these traits of character. They are embedded in a sound Christian faith. He is active in this faith. I also lift up before you the new captain of this vessel, Captain Dwight J. Rayet. We are here today as a group of his comrades and friends to point up the significance of this forward step he has taken. We marvel at what has been achieved. We rejoice in the privilege of sharing this day with our good and excelled friend, Butler Flower. We now ask that you would stand for the litany of dedication. To the end that all who are crew members of this vessel will serve the true spirit of brotherhood in service. To the growth of concern in meeting the needs of our world. Toward the continuing spirit of friendliness, honest work, and commitment of purpose. We dedicate this vessel, the H. Butler Flower, and the entire personnel moving, helping, and serving here, seeking to work in our community while keeping their own lives above reproach. You may be seated now for the consecration and for the dedication, if you will give us a minute to transfer up to the vessel.
Could the line reach over there? Could this go ahead? Okay, oh. Yeah, that'll reach. This one will. This one will reach. Tell him I'm going to. This one right here. That makes sense. There you go. Come out.
at this particular time. One is Esther Valentine, Mrs. Winslow Valentine, who is a longtime friend of the Butler Flower family. And then the other person is the wife of the marine architect, Mrs. John Hoffeld, and they now will christen the boat, the vessel.
It is my honor to christen the H. Butler Flower in behalf of all the family and all the guests here today.
Give it to her. First shot! Oh, that's great.
Okay. With water from the harbor, I add to the christening.
Let us now have the prayer of dedication and consecration and then the benediction. Beautiful sunny weather in the starry night, and for the beauty of the dawn and the glory of the sunset, for the deep waters to swim in, for the hills to climb and the hard work to do, and for the music along life's way that lifts our heart to heaven, for the hand clasp of the Butler Flower family, and for the people who have made this event and this dedication of this H. Butler Flower vessel possible on this day. Our Father, we thank you for what the Butler Flower family means to our Bayville and Oyster Bay and Center Island communities and the surroundings. We thank you for their gift of knowledge and for their dedication of service. We are thankful that their lives have touched ours. All of us here today are no doubt better for having been in their presence all of these years, and particularly this morning. And now, God be with us, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. The God, the three-in-one, rest upon this H. Butler Flower vessel, to all of those who will pioneer and guide and direct it, to its captain, Dwight Rallier, and to their team in full. Amen. The service is now completed, and we hope that you will join and share us for the remaining events, the tour, and for the delicacies and for the food. Thank you for this morning.
Well, why don't you tell us what this day means to you personally?
Well, it means, to me personally, it means that my father is receiving an honor he well deserves.
He's so humble that he still continued to call the boat the Pine Island.
That's right. The first time I heard him, he actually used the name H. Butler Flowers. Yesterday, when we were launching it, he did use the name then, but today he reverted back to Pine Island.
What do you think this community event indicates to you? I mean, with all this reception and everything.
It indicates that as somebody said out to me here today, my dad has built up this friendship over many, many years of a lot of people.
It's aside from his diligence and honesty and humbleness, it's the other most obvious thing about Mr. Flower, is the fact that he's so well loved in the community.
Oh, yes. Yes, indeed. Of course, what I see in him, this vessel shows his inventiveness. He's really a genius on inventiveness. Always has been.
Do you folks want to add anything to this day? Any wishes to Mr. Flower, to Butler?
Oh, we just love him. We've known him for a long, long time, and we love him.
Great.
It'll be a tremendous help to the whole harbor. It will improve the shell fishing tremendously.
You're the harbor master.
No, he works for me. I'm the superintendent of environmental control.
That's right. I remember we got you on tape once.
We had him write an interview on it.
Right.
We're very, very pleased with this operation.
What's different about this boat as opposed to other boats in the past?
This is going to be able to really clean up the harbor, get rid of the predators. so that his shellfish will indeed grow. Not only his, but the clan's. It'll help the individual clammer.
Environmentally, how is this boat an advantage?
Well, like you heard, it's a big vacuum cleaner. Am I expressing this correctly? And it will indeed get rid of these predators, which have killed the business here.
Oh, yeah, okay. Great. So it's a soft way of sucking up whatever you want off the bottom without really disturbing too much.
Without really harming anything that's valuable.
Great.
So it's tremendous environmentally, no question.
Great. Nice seeing you again.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll see you later. Okay. How do you know the Flower?
I built the boat.
You were one of the construction crew?
I'm a burner for Jacobson Shipyard.
Did you have to work with Mr. Flower directly?
No, but I've done him favors on building his boat. About as far.
What do you think of this boat? How is it different from any boat you've built in the past?
I think it's beautiful. All the boats we build are beautiful at Jake's.
They're usually build tugboats, by
Great. That's the Ferragamo.
Exxon, Texaco, all kinds. All new construction.
Great. You want to wish Mr. Flower anything while we got you here on tape?
Sure. I hope he has a lot
no
of...
leaks, I hope.
No. I hope he has a lot of success with the boat. And I hope he wants another one built, too.
Sounds like he does.
I hope so.
Great. See you later.
Do you want to go in here? No.
Day for you.
Right, very much so.
What would you like to let us know about it? What is this going to mean to you, this day?
It's a very important day. It's a real great honor, like I said before, to be asked to run this boat. This came from many years of experience. This is out of Butler's mind. It's not my invention. I've worked along with him, and like I said before, he didn't want to take the credit for this boat, but he deserves it. It is H. Butler Flower, the whole boat.
That's an interesting statement. Could you say more about that? It is H. Butler Flower?
Right. His first suction dredge was built, called the Pine Island, approximately 1930, around there. And from that time on, he's made improvements in his mind. They never had another suction dredge since then, but all the improvements are going into this boat now from all the years' experience that he's had. And it should work real well. It's not underway yet, but especially the maneuverability of it should be fantastic. We should be able to go sideways, backwards, around in circles, every which way.
What would you like to say to Mr. Flower when he looks back at this tape? Any kind of wish you might have for him on this day?
Best of luck and best wishes.
Great. Any of you folks want to add to that?
This is Harry from down at Jacobson Shipyard.
I helped build the boat there and lay out and cut out it and put it together, that boat there, and I enjoyed it too, working for Jacobson Shipyard.
How was this a unique experience for you?
Good.
I think the man's the ace as far as his ingenuity goes, as you can well see by the H. Butler Flower. And I sure hope the good Lord keeps him alive for a good many more years to continue the same ingenuity.
Great. Thank you. How you doing, everybody?
We're doing fine. How are you doing?
We're doing great.
Well, what do you think of the reception for the boat?
A gala event. A gala event and a lot of love towards you.
I appreciate all my friends, my business association, and the men working for me. I appreciate all of them.
You know what they say?
I want to publicly thank them. I want to thank you, too, for all you've done for me.
They've all said the same about you, Mr. Flower. They've all wanted to thank you and have only nice thoughts.
Well, it's been my pleasure. I get the credit for it, but really the men do the work, and they help me design. I make a few scratches on the paper. That's the result.
Isn't this some of those scratches that you've been showing us over the past year, some of that you've designed?
That's right.
What's special about this dredge?
Well, it's just a plain, ordinary vacuum cleaner, hydraulically done. And it will clean up, the main thing we clean up is the drills. Those snails about so long. They will clean up 90% of your oysters in 2 or 3 years, and they'll take 100% if you leave them there long enough. But with this, we have control of them.
Now, did I hear you say you've got another boat on the drawing board?
I got a couple of them. There's been a lot of problems with the clams in polluted water, and I'm trying to design one that we can just go take the clams out of the polluted water, put them in the clean water, and raise them. And I have another one thinking about it.
Well, it's a really glorious day, and we're going to go around and get some reactions from the people.
Well, thank you very kindly.
And of course, we'll see you at the studio so you can look at it back.
It'll be my pleasure. Thank you very kindly.
Great. You want to wish Mr. Flower anything, anybody here?
We sure do. All the success for future boats that are on the drawing.
This is the lady that the artist that made the plaque that they gave me. Thank you very kindly.
You're welcome.
It was so appropriate. And it showed the boat and everything.
Well, I'm glad that it's floating on the water now.
It kind of got me down for a while. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Will you pick us some oysters for dinner tonight, Mr. Flower?
Beg pardon?
Will you pick us some oysters for dinner tonight with your boat?
Oh, yes. We expect that boat to pick the sea oysters up at the rate of probably 2,000 bushel an hour.
My
God, that'll be enough for dinner.
That's
You want some for dinner tonight?
Well, these are small ones. They'd probably pick the big ones up, but we really couldn't handle the big ones because they have to be carved inside. Right. But this is basically for transplanting and for cleaning up the beds, and cleaning and taking the shells off of this area out where they go, all these boats are.
What's the name of this boat, Butler?
Pine Island.
That's the H. Butler Flower.
Actually, it's a copy of the Pine Island #1, and it's
with a lot of improvements.
Everything's the same except there's a lot of improvements. A better container for the drills so they can handle better. It's the same thing. We hold the patent onto it, but it has done me no financial value, but it's a satisfaction to have something you patent, and it's very useful. At present, between the greenhouse and the running the business, we're producing about 5 tons of oyster meat a week. We're planning with the Pine Island with the improvement of the living of the oysters, we'll probably increase that to 10 tons a week. Clear meats. That's a lot of food.
Where do you ship your oysters, Mr. Flower?
They go up to Boston and the northeast states. They go to Philadelphia. They go to Baltimore and Washington and all up and down the coast. We'll also go to Florida some of them.
How did you get interested in oysters? How did you get interested in oysters?
I never knew anything else. I was born and brought up into it. My grandfather started in 1887. My father continued on from there, and when I got 15 years old, I got into it.
The rest is history.
Right now we're doing all right. 20 years ago, I didn't think there was enough money to build a boat like that in the oyster business. In fact, there wasn't. I was just talking to an associate of mine, and he said in his day, around the turn of the century, there was 200 oyster companies in Long Island Sound. Do you know how many's left now? 3 of us. It's actually, the oyster business has been a dying business. Until Joseph Palacy, the owner of that boat, who's since passed on, he started the mariculture in the greenhouse and was very successful. In 3 years, the oysters we'll be selling will be the offspring from 60 oysters. So it's fantastic what you can do if you have the men, the equipment, and the location to do it.
Okay. Hi. How do you feel about this day? Is this a good day for you today?
I think it's a wonderful day. Marvelous weather and beautiful people, beautiful boats. I was really quite surprised at the size of the boat, although I had been on it. I went up a ladder and came down when she was in the Jacobs' shipyard. But I didn't explore the boat. But I have, and it's a beautiful, beautiful boat.
Any wishes for Butler himself? Any wishes for him?
Best wishes that he has good health the rest of his life.
Thank you.
I'm very proud of him.
Thank you. What's it feeling like to you?
Very historic from some people, and very historic for a lot of people, I should say. You know, I feel very happy for Butler. We went through a lot. We sacrificed a lot of things for the boat. I'm sure we will get paid in the end. I know that. This is Martin right here. He runs the juvenile section. John, and he wants to say something to you too.
Well, listen, are you guys going to be working on that boat? And are you guys going to be working on that boat actually?
Possibly. There is a possibility that we might.
You work over at the greenhouse?
In the greenhouse, yeah.
I think we got you on tape, didn't you, last year?
Yeah, last year on the movie.
Right. And you too. You showed on the oyster tray.
Yes.
Right. Did you ever get to see the final tape?
Yes, we did. We saw it when you showed it in Davis.
Very good. Very good.
Great. So,
I won't be working on that boat.
You won't?
No, I work in the greenhouse.
I plan to do the same, but there is possibilities that we will go on the boat.
Now, show the custody you guys want to wish Butler what you can.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Anything else?
Good luck.
No, wish him the best of luck.
We hope it works out, you know. That's the main thing, really. We hope there's no problems that goes along with it, you know. There probably won't be any, you know. But we hope there won't be any.
Yeah, my name's Oscar Summers, and Butler has known me since I was born. The Summers family and the Flower family were all very friendly. In fact, Franklin Flower and I went to college together at Lehigh University, and we've had a very close relationship for many, many years. And Butler has always been a very super energetic person who just loved to work, and that was his whole life. And to think at his age today, building a new 85-foot boat is really quite spectacular. I think it's tremendous. It's his love, and I know it's going to work out well because he'll fool with it until he gets it working the way it should work. So thank you very much.
20 more years to build the next two boats to make the oyster house, 3 times the size he wants to make it. Okay?
Does he really have that?
He really wants to make it 3 times as large, yeah. That's it.
Are you having a good time here today?
Wonderful. Very, very proud.
Well, I said he wished him luck with his new boat. He really deserves it.
Wonderful day, Butler. I never expected to see this happen.
How long have you known Mr. Flower?
I've known him 55 years.
I've known him for about 55 years.
They and their wives were friends of C and Butler.
Well, it's really nice to see you gentlemen sitting here looking so well on this nice day.
We're all widows, too. We're in the same boat as Butler.
We're a widow.
Widow.
You guys out here looking for dates today, are you?
Not me.
They don't have any trouble.
Great.
All dolled up like that.
Boat over there, the item A, is the boat I used to take our church school picnic on 60 years ago. 60 years ago, there it is, right there. And I pinched my finger on the ship.
You don't look that old, Ralph.
Lie to me.
You don't look that old,
We
Ralph.
used to have our church school picnics on that a long time
A
ago.
lot of history.
Yeah, a lot of history.
There's no question that Mr. Flower is a very important part of the community.
Oh, yes, no question about it.
Very active in the Methodist Church.
He's very active in the Methodist Church here in Oyster Bay, too. He's a trustee. He's been, I think, the longest serving trustee in the church. Years. 50 years, I guess. Wonderful man. question about it.
If his wife were living, she'd be very proud today. She never liked to ride on a boat, though.
He's a very modest person. Very modest person. And I think the thing is, it isn't what you have, it's how you use what you've got. When you think of a man with an education, 7th grade or something like that, and they say when he got a thought, he'd go tell a fellow and sit down and do it with a stick in the sand. And if it wasn't right, he'd rub it out and say, well, how's that? The fellow would say, that looks pretty good. And that's the way he did it.
In fact, we actually have a picture of him doing that on videotape.
Oh, you do?
Did you see the documentary we made on him?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But he would do that after church, and he'd say, well, now, you know, I'm going to do something. I'm going to try it. And he'd get a stick, and he'd go in the back, and he'd say, now, this is the way I think it's going to be. And that's what he'd do. And then he'd take it to whoever he took it to, where the guy would put it in blueprints and design. Quite a guy, I'll tell you. And he's a basic, good Christian man, right from the core of the foundation. Regardless of all these other wonderful things he does, he's really a genius. He really is.
Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts. I'm sure everybody will appreciate hearing that.
How about that?
What's the name of the book? Butler, what's the name of the
What does that say on there?
What's the name of the book?
What does that say? Not what's the name? What does that say?
Pineapple the second. In my mind, it's Pineapple the second.
Very nice.
Nice looking job, isn't it? Sure is. You made that. They did a nice job.
I don't want to put mine out.
No.
I'll put it
Okay.
I'll put it right in the middle here.
There it is.
He cuts a mean piece of cake.
Give him that plate. Here, here's one, Dad. Here's the picker.
Picker up here.
I guess we'll let you finish it.
Okay.
Don't mind the fingers.
There you go.
Here it is, Aunt Ruth. Did it before.
That's for you.
That's right. I need the whole thing.
All right.
Here's the,
That's beautiful.
okay. Now here, we'll give it to the ladies. They're gonna.
Okay.
All right, there you are. Okay, that's yours, Dad. That's it. Now everybody's lined up.
Oh, let me know if you take pictures. I'll leave it there.
Open it up.
Congratulations.
I'll let you see it.
What is now?
Turn to the television.
This is Ruth Gardner, spelled like the island.
Turn to the television, DC.
Hey, Ruth, tell them who that is.
This is Ruth. Could you just wait a minute? This is Ruth Gardner, spelled like the island, Gardiner, Flower, and William A. Flower. My grandparents, our grandparents, I should say.
They are the starting of the oyster business.
The man who started the oyster business. He was born 1926. She was born in 1932.
1918.
Or 18. Correction, please.
All right.
Okay. Do I get a little piece of paper? Huh?
Want to cut a piece of cake for yourself?
Yeah, I'll take yours. It tastes better because it's yours.
When they're all ready, Dad, let them cook. I'll take care of it.
Here,
Take care of it.
Okay.
you cut one for me, I give it for myself.
Oh, okay. 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 Let me just take this down and then I'll do it.
Want a plate?
Well, I just want to say that it's been a wonderful opportunity for me to join the Franklin Flower Company, and also that it's a real pleasure to know a gentleman like this. And the years that I have been in the oyster business, it's been really spectacular, and there's never a chance that you feel as though everything has been finished. There's always something new. There's always something to advance. And all of these oysters that we raise in this bay, we do satisfy a lot of people throughout the world that get a real treat and a real joy out of our product.
Exciting and new. Come aboard. We're expecting you and love. Life's sweetest reward. Let it flow. It floats back to you. Your mind on a new romance and love won't hurt anymore. It's an open smile on a friendly shore. It's love. It's love. It's Set your mind on a new romance. And love won't hurt anymore. It's an open smile on a friendly shore. It's love. It's love. It's love. It's the love boat. It's the love boat. It's the love boat. It's the love boat. It's love. I'm a happy man. I made my choice in life. I chose to settle down, chose to take a wife. And I take pleasure in my quiet hearth and happy home. I never gave my heart its chance to roam. I could have been a sailor and sailed the 7 seas. The wind in my face all day. Can you taste the salty breeze? I could have been a lover, watching the waves before me part. But I settled for safer harbors of my heart. I'm a lucky man, the envy of my peers. I never ask for favors, I never show my fears. Surrounded by too many friends, I'm a one-man band. With all the trappings of my life, live secondhand. I could have been a sailor, rolling through the night. My sails before the wind, with stars my only light. I could have been a dreamer, but dreams just fall apart. So I settled for safer harbors of my heart. Don't go changing to try to please me. You never let me down before. Don't imagine you're too familiar, and I don't see you anymore. I wouldn't leave you in times of trouble. We never could have come this far. Yeah, I took the good times, I'll take the bad times, I'll take you just the way you are. Don't go trying some new fashion. Don't change the color of your hair. You always have my unspoken passion, although I might not seem to care. And I don't want clever conversation. I never want to work that hard. I just want someone that I can talk to. I want you just the way you are.